What is up, Dragon Ball Super players? My name is Pat O'Neill, and today I'm going to try to help you guys think outside the box. Far too many people aren't realizing their full potential in this game simply because of the assumptions they make, and usually these assumptions are pretty bad. And the thing is, everyone makes them in this community. I've made them. Many of the so-called better players in this game have made them. My friends have made them. Tons of people in Facebook groups and at my locals also make them. It's important going into set 2 that you are conscious of your assumptions if you want to fully maximize your testing, your deck building, your theory crafting. So let's go and take a quick look at some of the examples of bad assumptions that I've seen in this community. Now, I'm sure many of you, especially those of you out there that visit the Facebook groups, are no strangers to seeing some of the statements I'm going to show you guys in a second. These are some of the examples of bad assumptions that I'm talking about, and they can really hinder a lot of aspects of you as a player, especially your growth. That applies to any player in general, but especially the new players out there. This list also by no means is all-inclusive. I just want to show you guys some of the examples first, then we're going to go over why they're bad or why it might be a huge mistake to have these kind of assumptions. So the first one is early opinions. I've seen things like Zeno button is broken, the cards in yellow in set 2 are completely terrible. Incorrect testing or basing results off of your local metagame, your local tournaments. Things like Vegeta keeps winning all my test games or locals, clearly he's the best deck. Groupthink or echo chamber. Broly is good because he discards cards, which then translates to everybody in the group saying things like Broly is tier 1, why would I play any other green leader? And finally, net decking. Anthony Hernandez just won Gen Con with Champa. Clearly that's the best deck in the format. So now let's go over why these assumptions aren't good to have, and we'll start with net decking. Net decking is a double-edged sword. For one thing, it gives you a template on how you might play a certain style of deck, play a certain style of leader, or get a feel for a certain play style. And this is great for new and intermediate players. Either it'll teach you the basics or get you outside your comfort zone so you can push yourself to the next level. But it comes with a pretty big downside, which is that it allows the more experienced players to safely make assumptions about your deck choice and play style. So we're going to use Anthony Hernandez's Gen Con list as an example to show you guys. You can go to the Dragon Ball Super website, go under event coverage, and you'll find his first place Champa list from Saturday. So going into that event, you'll recall Anthony was posting a lot of YouTube videos about his mono blue Vegeta list, his mono green Broly list, and those really took off. They become very popular. So used to see them all the time on Facebook. A lot of people in my locals and some other places I had traveled to were playing them as well because they're easy to pilot, and you'll get some success with them. So in going into Gen Con, he knew that most people, being new to the game, were probably going to play something similar to that. And those decks are not equipped to deal with a ton of early aggression. So Anthony started playing cards like the following: Unceasing Evolution Frost. It's a 3-drop double striker, which is the fastest double striker in the game in terms of energy cost. So it's going to get out there really quickly and start putting a lot of damage out. And the Vegeta lists are playing a lot of things like 4, 5, 6, and like 4+7 drops. The curve is not there. It's not equipped to deal with this kind of pressure, and that lets him get a pretty easy first place at the event. So after the event, everybody starts to take notice of Champa. Champa starts popping up everywhere, and they're all playing things like Unceasing Evolution Frost on their list. They're trying to emulate Anthony in this case. And then the ones that aren't are switching their Vegeta lists up or whatever have you, their Broly list, to play things like Crusher Ball. You get these blue-yellow Vegeta builds that are trying to stave off the early aggression and control the match more, where they're in a stronger position where they can play their big finishers. So Anthony, knowing this going into the New York 1K, swaps out the Frost for the following: Iron Wall Magetta. And this is a really smart thing for 2 reasons. One, if you are playing the old version of the Champa list and you're just playing Frost, this card will beat the Frost cleanly and then just keep going. It's also great against control decks because this card is inevitability. It can go the distance. It has just enough damage to, consistently pressure, and you have to be willing to waste premium cards to get this card off the board. That's really important. The control decks don't want to be playing these, energy boost Beeruses or raging attacker Vegetas or anything on a 3-drop 15k vanilla as far as they're concerned. They want to save them for your bigger double strike threats, but they have to spend them on Magetta instead, and that lets the actual threats in Anthony's deck go through unopposed. So again, smart change because he anticipated what you guys were going to do. And then it's even further when we look at his deck from the ARG in Atlantic City. He swaps out his Luis's Coercions and his Vados' Assistance for Kaba's Awakening and Ultimate Judgment Jocko. More people are now starting to play things like, Soul Striker, Goku, the yellow blue Vegeta list, some different variants now of the mono blue Vegeta list, and even some Gohans are starting to pop up. The format is definitely slower. It's more control oriented. So now he again is going back to playing a faster style deck by allowing his deck to, essentially tap out. He has no energy. He can actually pay all of his energy and still have some kind of defensive tool to defend himself. So this lets him put on a ton of pressure. And the general theme here, if you haven't caught on by now, is innovation. Anthony and his team are innovating with each tournament, and it's all just through playing the game. You guys in this game do not want to be a follower. You want to catch people off guard by playing something uniquely powerful, something that they are not expecting to play against. Alright, so now let's go over some more examples, namely why groupthink is bad. At the start of set 1, Broly here, he was definitely the most popular green leader. And I feel like that's largely because he was pretty straightforward to play and build, and depending on what kind of game you came from, he probably seemed ridiculous. If you came from Yu-Gi-Oh!, cards like Delinquent Duo, Confiscation, Forceful Sentry back in the day, those cards were game breaking. If you hit your opponent with 2 or all 3 of those cards, the game was over. You've locked them out. There's nothing they can do, and it can happen really early. Broly, just reading his effect, seems like it would be a similar style of case, a similar case. But if you come from a game like, say, Magic, cards like Mind Rot aren't really that good. Okay, sorry, wrong card. So here's Mind Rot. Mind Rot is, somewhat expensive. Your opponent gets to pick the cards. It doesn't really add anything to the board, and that's not that good. It's like a sideboard card at best in Standard. Maybe you'll see 1 or 2 of main board, but it's, heavily relegated to draft play for the most part. The only kind of hand destruction cards in Magic that you usually see any play are cards like Thoughtseize because they're kind of backbreaking. And those are few and far between. The vast majority of hand destruction cards are, not super great. So if you come from a game like that, Broly doesn't seem like he's all that. But, you see players like Anthony again putting up these lists and other people putting up these lists because, again, it's easy to build it. You see people having some kind of decent success with it, and it's off to the races with Broly. And cards like Goku and Gohan are just largely ignored because everyone's playing Broly. No one's even giving them a second thought. So now we look at Gohan. Gohan, again, completely ignored for the most part. I remember right before the New York 1K, I posted, what I thought was the best leader for each color in the set, along with a tier list, and I thought that Gohan was the best green leader in the game, and he was possibly a top tier leader. And the response I got from the community was, for lack of a better term, toxic. Most people flamed me, told me I was trash at the game. I had no idea what I was talking about. Broly was clearly one of the best decks in the entire game, if not the best deck. And, there was just no way that Gohan could possibly be good. And the sad thing is, once Amani top 4 the New York event with this, everybody suddenly was like, oh, hey, Gohan's really good. Let me get that Gohan list. You don't want to be the guy that's waiting for the Gohan list. You want to be Amani. You want to innovate. You want to be the guy that's the first person to play the deck. And that's just because you have such a huge advantage over everybody else because they just don't know how to play it. There's just this huge untapped potential that's like just there waiting, and most of the population isn't even aware of it. And this just brings me back to Ginyu. When I sat down to play this game for the first time, people told me that Vegeta was good because he couldn't be locked. You can't just leave him at 5 life. He doesn't have to play results at training or any of that, which is awesome. And he also got a ton of free card advantage. When I looked at all the leaders and I saw that, hey, Ginyu's the only other one that can do that, there might be something there, because if Vegeta's good and this guy's really similar, he must also be good. The thing is, he interacts with the Ginyu Force cards. So I took the time to just look at the Ginyu Force cards. So if we go down the line here, Raccoon, after playing with him, he's not good because most leaders, say Vegeta, he flips really early on. He is a 15k on the backside. Raccoon can't deal any damage to that. And then his other effect is basically irrelevant. So we can just rule him out because he's not a card we want to be top decking for 60 to 70% of the game. So he's just not worth including in our list. Birder fares a little bit better because your opponent can't attack him after he gets in for that early damage, but again, he falls off. So knowing that, we don't want to be playing Raccoon and Birder. Jace is great, but he relies on Raccoon and Birder being good, which they're not, so he ends up getting cut. And then you look at Captain Ginyu, he requires Raccoon, Birder, and Jace be in your deck to be valuable, and then you can just see it's another obvious cut. So the only real Ginyu Force member left is Goldo, and he's fantastic because he's a blocker and he's pseudo removal. So at this point, I've decided, hey, we just need to play Goldo. He's the only one that's worth playing. We're just going to play other really broken cards, such as Cold Bloodlust. I know from my Naruto background that this card is really similar to a card called Comparative Strengths, and that card was incredibly cheap negation in that game, and it basically dominated a whole format. So I knew from a previous game that I had carried over that this card was probably good. And I didn't really need to be confined to playing the Ginyu Force. I could just play, Goldo as a target that sometimes I could get off Ginyu's effect and just play the good stuff. So instead, I just filled my deck with broken cards. Things like Gotenks, Energy Boost Beerus, Princess Speed Vegeta, cards that I had already known were good from playing Dual Attack Goku or from playing Gohan or any of the other number of lists. And with that knowledge in hand, I just took the deck to my local, and I played it against my test groups, and I just see how it fared. And I just refined it from the input I got. What was I losing to? Okay, I lost the Dual Attack Goku. Alright, well, how do I counter that? And then I make the adjustments. Or, hey, this card really wasn't working that well. I used to be playing a bunch of 15k vanillas in the deck. The deck is a little bit more controlled. I don't need these aggressive bodies. Let me remove them. So by talking to, Nick Botchis, Anthony Verrilli, Nick and Joe Alheiser, Eddie, Victor Studioso, Craig and Jamal from Philadelphia, I figured out, hey, these are the changes I need to make. And eventually it's what started as, mostly yellow with some splash cards into like a blue-yellow list, and then finally the tricolor Ginyu list that is now seeing a ton of play thanks to Jordan topping with it, which again, going back to what we were saying, you don't want to be Jordan, you don't want to be waiting for him to have the list. You want to be, at the time, you want to be Jordan. You want to be Amani. You want to be the guy that's like, hey, here's the list. You surprised everybody. You want to be that guy. So with all that knowledge in hand, I had found something that was uniquely mine until obviously recently, and I could take it to tournaments in my area and just completely dominate with it. And finally, don't fall into the trap of your first impressions at this game. Remember, we were talking about how early opinions are not good. Things like people saying Zeno button's really broken. Set 2's yellow cards are completely trash. I see a lot of people saying things like Vegeto's going to be really broken, Cell's going to be really broken, how do we deal with indestructible Zamasu, things like that. Don't be confined to these things. Don't think they're set in stone just because you see it on Facebook, you see it on YouTube, things like that. Just play the game and figure it out. So to give you an example of why it's probably a bad idea, I remember when this guy was first shown here, Chilled, everybody thought he wasn't good because he's 10k on the back and all of his support cards except for the 5-drop are not good, so why bother playing him? Well, for starters, just looking at him, he awakens at 6, which means on average he's going to draw you at least 3 to 4 more cards than the average leader over the course of the game's number of turns. On top of that, there's nothing on this card, just like with Ginyu, that says I have to be playing, all of the chilled cards. Yes, Ginyu does mention Ginyu, but it doesn't mandate you play Ginyu. Same thing here with chill. You don't have to be playing any of the chilled support cards. The only card you really should be playing in chilled is this guy, the Doria, because it's basically a staple. It cycles, it's free. I don't have to explain why this card is very good. So, just knowing that, there are other things people are missing with chilled, and I think people are starting to realize it now that tokens are being ruled as battle cards. You don't have to be playing chilled as a yellow leader. You can be playing him with, again, good cards. You can be playing him as a blue-green list and using cards like the new super rare Frieza and the new super rare Kale, and just use the tokens as fodder for these effects. These cards effects are basically free when you play him as chilled, or play them with chilled rather, I should say. So I know that one of the first decks that I'm going to be trying is a blue-green chilled list, and we'll see how it fares against some of the other cards in the set. I don't know how it'll do against a Goku Black or a Zamasu deck due to the indestructible rolling, but we shall see. The point is, the idea is there. People just need to be more conscious of it and not immediately assume that the most obvious thing is the correct choice. And that is all from me, folks. So this has been my first Dragon Ball Super video. Again, my name is Pat O'Neill. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more content. Also, leave me a comment below and let me know how I did on my first video. If there's anything you guys want to see, I would love to hear from you guys. Hopefully with set 2 I'm going to have a lot more deck profiles and possibly some card analysis and design space analysis like I did with the Naruto game, for those of you who remember me from that. This weekend I'm going to be heading up to Connecticut, close to Hartford, Connecticut, where the ARG will be, to hang out with the CT crew guys. We will be doing a case opening as well as at least say 8 to 10 hours of testing via live stream. I will try to leave a link in the description below, so if you guys are interested in seeing that, again, tune in this Friday. It probably won't be till like later on in the night, say 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time, but I figured I'd let you guys know, for those of you guys who want to see some unique brews, because we're probably going to be playing some crazy stuff. I know I'm trying to play a Babidi list, a mono yellow Teen Gohan list, and a few other random odds and ends. So thanks for watching.